A woman in white walks down the aisle of a church, not toward an altar, toward a coffin. Her children stand beside her, dressed for mourning. She looks down at the man inside the casket, her husband of more than 20 years, and she speaks 4 words that change the entire meaning of everything that came before them. Things could have ended differently. This is the funeral of Jonassi Gamora, a man who built a banking empire from nothing. A man respected, feared, and, as the next 12 minutes will show you, a man who was living 4 separate lives at once, behind 4 separate doors, with 4 different women who each believed they were the one who mattered most. But here's what makes this story different from every other betrayal story you've seen. By the time Jonasi is lying in that coffin, the person responsible for putting him there isn't a rival, isn't the law, and isn't fate. It's his wife, and she planned it for years. To understand how a woman builds her entire public image around a perfect marriage while quietly engineering her husband's death from the inside, we have to go back to the beginning. Before the funeral, before the affairs were exposed, back to when Joyce Gamora still believed she had everything. Joyce Gamora has built a career out of looking happy. She's a social media influencer with a brand built entirely around the image of a flawless marriage, the successful husband, the luxury home, the perfect family photographed at every angle. Brands sponsor her because of that image. Her entire public identity depends on people believing her marriage works. Her husband, Jonasi, is the man people point to as proof that hard work pays off. He rose from poverty to build a banking empire, and on the surface, he plays the part. Generous, charming, a pillar of the community. But Jonasi's real defining trait isn't ambition. It's entitlement. He doesn't see people as people. He sees them as things he's earned the right to collect. His wealth, in his mind, isn't just money. It's permission. Behind Joyce stands her husband's older brother, Mages, a man whose entire identity is built around loyalty to Jonasi, even when that loyalty costs him everything. Mages is the one who cleans up the messes, the one who looks the other way. He will spend the better part of 2 decades protecting secrets that aren't even his. And there's a secret hiding in plain sight. A woman named Essie, a hairdresser from the township, who funded Jonasi's university education herself. Money she earned braiding hair for years, and who Jonasi married in secret, while letting his brother Mages pose as her husband to the outside world. Joyce doesn't know about Essie. Essie has been waiting, quietly, for over 20 years. This is the world the story begins in. A perfect public image sitting directly on top of a foundation that was never stable to begin with. All it takes is one more woman to walk into Jonasi's life, and the entire structure starts to crack. Her name is Matipa. Young, ambitious, and confident in a way Joyce never had to be. Because Joyce already had everything handed to her by marriage, and Matipa is determined to build her own path, even if that path runs straight through someone else's husband. Matipa starts out dating Jonasi's brother, Mages. But the moment she realizes Jonasi can offer her something bigger, money, status, mobility, she doesn't hesitate. She leaves Mages for his own brother. And true to form, Mages never confronts either of them. He simply absorbs the betrayal the same way he absorbs everything else. Jonasi and Matipa's affair becomes public. Joyce finds out, but instead of confronting her husband, she goes after the other woman directly, tracking Matipa down and attacking her physically. It's the wrong target, and it reveals the first real crack in who Joyce is. She will fight to protect her image before she'll fight to protect herself. When Jonasi finds out his wife assaulted his mistress, he doesn't apologize for the affair. He gets angry that Joyce embarrassed him. And in a moment that tells you everything about the power balance in this marriage, he's the one who packs a bag and leaves, moving in with Matipa for an entire year, while Joyce stays behind, maintaining the public fiction that her marriage is intact. For 12 months, Jonasi lives an entirely separate life, just blocks away from the one he built with Joyce. And the woman the world believes has a perfect marriage is quietly falling apart behind a closed front door. The cracks are no longer small, they're structural, and they're about to multiply. What follows is a year-long tug-of-war that exposes exactly what kind of man Jonasi really is. A wedding anniversary forces the issue. Joyce, desperate to maintain her public image as the loyal wife, and with her brand and sponsorships riding on it, tells Jonasi he needs to show up. He refuses. Until a business deal he wants is dangled in front of him, conditional on his attendance. Only then does he agree to come. Matipa arrives at the event first. Confident. Visible. Almost daring the public to ask questions. But watching Jonasi renew his vows to Joyce in front of everyone breaks something in her. She realizes, for the first time, that she was never going to replace his wife. She was only ever going to share him. That same night, Joyce, finally ready to walk away, signs the divorce papers Jonasi brought with him. And in the moment she stops fighting for him, something shifts in Jonasi too. He pulls his hand back from the papers. He tells her he's missed her. He moves back in. Matipa is left alone in the mansion he installed her in, and the dynamic flips entirely. She becomes the one calling, showing up, demanding answers, while Jonasi simply ignores her and focuses on rebuilding his marriage. It looks, for a moment, like reconciliation, a family vacation, talk of having another child. Joyce demands Matipa be fired from her job and gets her wish. But the pattern here isn't reconciliation, it's a cycle. Jonasi destabilizes, retreats to whichever woman makes him feel powerful again, and returns home once guilt or convenience pulls him back. Every member of this family is learning to live inside that cycle, and no one has figured out yet how to break it. Just as Joyce allows herself to feel safe again, the floor disappears beneath her entirely. She walks into a hospital corridor and finds Matipa, the mistress she believed had been fired and forgotten, giving birth to twins, fathered by her husband. Joyce collapses on the spot. Jonasi's explanation, delivered on his knees, is that he'd gone back to Matipa in a moment of anger, that he'd begged her to terminate the pregnancy, that this was a mistake. It's a lie wrapped around a half-truth. He did go back to Matipa, but not out of anger, out of possessiveness, after discovering she'd been spending time with another man and deciding she still belonged to him. For the first time, Joyce considers ending things permanently, not the marriage, her husband. She retrieves a gun. When Jonasi walks into the room and finds her holding it, she lets it drop to the floor, and he assumes she intended to hurt herself, not him. He responds with performative concern about her mental health. The same man who put her in that position in the first place, now positioning himself as her protector. This is the turning point. And it's not a twist about Jonasi's character. By now, the audience already knows exactly who he is. The real turning point is Joyce. From this moment forward, she stops reacting. She starts strategizing. Faced with twins who already exist and a husband who will never stop, Joyce makes a calculated decision. Rather than fight the polygamy, she'll formalize it. She calls a meeting with Jonasi and mages and announces she will allow her husband to take Matipa as a second wife. It looks like surrender. It is, in fact, the first move of a much longer game, one where Joyce trades the appearance of control for the substance of it, positioning herself to manage the family from the center rather than be discarded from the outside. With her husband's abuse turned violent, and the legal system offering her no real protection, Joyce stops looking for justice through conventional means. She builds her own. During a prior arrest, Joyce had met a woman in custody, a woman who had contracted HIV from an unfaithful partner of her own. Joyce remembers her, tracks her down after release, and pays her to specifically target Jonasi. It's not random. It's surgical. Joyce knows her husband's one unbreakable weakness. He cannot resist temptation, regardless of consequence. She doesn't need to do anything else. She simply puts the opportunity in front of him and waits. Jonasi takes the bait. He contracts the virus. All three of his wives avoid infection. Only Jonasi, and eventually Lindani, are affected. He spends years in denial, refusing treatment, his health deteriorating in slow, visible stages while his isolation grows. As his body fails, so does his empire. The brother who spent decades protecting him is the only one still willing to help, dragging Jonasi from house to house as his other women refuse him entry. And in his final weeks, Joyce makes her last move. She brings the dying man back into her own home, presenting herself publicly as the dutiful wife caring for her husband. It's theater. While Jonasi is too weak to understand what's happening, Joyce and her son Mangi manipulate him into signing over the vast majority of his banking empire, cutting out Matipa, cutting out the children he had outside his marriage to Joyce, securing everything for her own bloodline in a single, irreversible signature. The man who spent his entire life believing his wealth made him untouchable dies having signed away the only thing he ever actually controlled. And the woman who orchestrated his death is the one standing beside the bed when it happens. Not out of love, but out of 15 years of patience. At the funeral, Joyce fights to control even the body. Essie, the wife of 20 years that no one knew about, tries to be involved in preparing him for burial. Joyce blocks her, asserting her legal status as the only recognized wife, and the casket is returned to her control before burial. It's the final act of an old habit. Even in death, Joyce is managing the narrative. Standing at the grave, Joyce remembers the conversation she had with her dying husband, the one where she finally told him the truth, that she was the one who found the woman who infected him, that she planned it, that everything that happened to him in his final years happened because of a decision she made years earlier, the day she decided she was done losing. Mages, the brother who spent his entire life protecting Jonasi's secrets, is left with nothing but the wreckage of loyalty that was never returned. Essie is left as the forgotten wife who gave everything and received almost nothing back, not even acknowledgement at the funeral. Matipa, who once believed she'd won, is left with twins and no claim to the empire she helped build. And Joyce. Joyce gets everything. The company, the assets, the public image of the grieving widow intact. She has spent years building a brand around a perfect marriage, and in the end, she gets to keep the only part of it that ever mattered to her, control. But the final image of the story isn't Joyce's victory, it's her son. The same Mangi who helped his mother secure the family fortune is shown, in the closing moments, sleeping with Lindani, the very same young woman his father groomed years earlier. Joyce destroyed the man. She never touched the pattern that made him. What makes this story land isn't the betrayal. Stories about cheating husbands are everywhere. What makes The Polygamist different is that it never lets you settle into rooting for anyone. Jonasi is the obvious villain, but Joyce isn't a hero. She's someone who learned to survive by becoming just as calculating as the man who broke her. Her revenge isn't justice. It's a mirror. And that final shot, her son repeating the exact pattern his father started, is the real point of the whole series. Joyce spent years making sure Jonasi paid for what he did. She never once stopped to ask whether the household she was protecting was capable of producing anything different. That's the actual warning in this story. Destroying the person who hurt you doesn't destroy the system that made them. Sometimes it just hands that system to the next generation. If you want recaps like this every week, subscribe and let me know in the comments. Who do you think paid the highest price in this story? Jonasi or everyone left standing after him?